12,000 years ago, every human being alive began here. This is not a metaphor. This is the oldest fact on Earth. We call Ethiopia ancient, as if that is a limitation. Ethiopia calls it a head start. While Europe was building its first cities, this land had already buried 3 empires. While the colonial powers were drawing lines across Africa, Ethiopia was refusing to appear inside them. While the world was learning what civilization costs, Ethiopia already knew. Here, the ground burns at the temperature of a furnace, and a man feeds predators by hand at midnight. Here, a king looks at solid rock and carves heaven downward. Here, a river does not separate nations. It creates them. Ethiopia does not ask you to admire it. It simply continues. We ask what a place leaves behind when it has survived everything. Ethiopia does not offer easy answers. It offers only the truth of what endurance costs. "125 meters below sea level. This is where the Earth is still becoming. The Danakil Depression sits in the far northeast of Ethiopia, where 3 tectonic plates pull slowly apart from one another, centimeter by centimeter, year by year. It is one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth. Surface temperatures reach 50 degrees Celsius. Hydrothermal vents push boiling brine through the crust in yellow and green acid pools. Colors so alien, they have no business appearing on a living planet. This is not a landscape that tolerates metaphor. It simply is what it is. And what it is the surface of another world. The Danakil sits at the Afar Triple Junction, 3 geological rifts meeting in a single point. The land here is not stable. It is separating. In geological time, the Horn of Africa is slowly becoming an island. The Red Sea is slowly becoming an ocean. The Danakil is not a place in the present tense. It is a place mid-sentence, still deciding what it will become. And yet, people have lived here for centuries. The Afar people, one of the oldest continuous communities on Earth, mine salt from the Danakil floor as their ancestors have for generations. They cut it by hand in blocks. They load it onto camels. They walk it out across the heat to the highland markets. The same route, the same method, the same salt that once served as currency across an empire. The Afar did not colonize this landscape. They negotiated with it. Not by making it softer, by making themselves harder. Salt mining in the Danakil is one of the most physically brutal occupations on Earth. The reflective flats intensify the heat. Eyes burn, skin cracks. The work begins before dawn, and the men move with the efficiency of people who know the desert will not wait. They earn less in a week than most viewers of this documentary earn in an hour. That is not a political statement. That is the weight this landscape asks its people to carry. The hardest places make the most honest people. Every night, at the edge of a walled city, a man calls to the dark. Something answers. Harar sits in the eastern highlands of Ethiopia, a city of 3,000 alleyways 99 mosques, and walls built in the 16th century to keep the world out. UNESCO calls it a World Heritage Site. Historians call it the fourth holiest city in Islam. The Harari people call it Gay, simply the city. For centuries, Harar was closed to outsiders. The gates shut at night, the walls held. But there is one tradition that required the gates to open. Not for trade, not for war, for something stranger than either. The hyenas of Harar have lived alongside the city for as long as the city has existed. They came as hyenas do, drawn by the smell of butchery, by waste, by the proximity of humans. They were not invited. They simply arrived and stayed. In famine years, centuries ago, the hyenas grew aggressive and began taking children from the edges of the city. The elders made a decision, not to hunt them, to feed them. One act of deliberate generosity in exchange for coexistence. The agreement held. Tonight, at the Falana gate, a man named Yusuf crouches in the dark with a basket of meat. He does not flinch when the first one comes. He calls it by name. He holds the meat between his teeth, and the hyena takes it, gently, from his mouth. This is not performance. This is a contract 500 years old, being renewed at midnight, as it has been every night that Harar has stood. But Harar is changing. The ritual that once happened in private, between a city and its predators, now happens under phone screens and tour group murmurs. The meaning does not disappear, but it is tested. And as the city expands beyond its walls, the hyenas have less territory, less food, less space in which to remain wild. The agreement depends on the hyena remaining a predator, not a performance. When the darkness is lit by phone screens, something in the contract begins to strain. Every city feeds something it cannot fully tame. "11 churches, carved downward. No scaffold, no crane. Only faith and the decision that heaven belongs underground." Lalibela sits at 2,600 meters in the highlands of northern Ethiopia, a small town of red earth and eucalyptus. Unremarkable until the moment you understand what is beneath your feet. In the 12th century, King Lalibela received a vision. Jerusalem had fallen. The Christian pilgrimage routes were closed. Lalibela looked at the stone beneath him and decided to build Jerusalem here. Not above the ground, into it. 11 monolithic churches, not built, but released from the rock, carved downward in their entirety, still attached to the bedrock on all sides. Bete Medhane Alem is the largest rock-hewn church on earth. The stone did not resist. Or perhaps it did, and the carvers did not stop. The engineering of Lalibela is not answered by any theory historians fully agree upon. No written record of the construction method survives. The churches drain their own water through hidden channels cut into the rock. Channels that have not failed in 900 years of Ethiopian rainy seasons. Lalibela himself is said to have been assisted by angels. The engineers say that is not the explanation. They have not yet offered a better one. Every year at Ethiopian Christmas, Jena, celebrated on January 7th, 80,000 pilgrims descend on Lalibela. They come on foot. They come for days. They come dressed in white, a sea of white cotton moving through red mountains toward a hole in the earth that contains their God. The Church of Ethiopia claims to hold the original Ark of the Covenant, not as metaphor, as physical fact. No outsider is permitted to verify this. The guardian priest lives with it alone until he dies and a new guardian takes his place. Whether the Ark is there is not the point. What matters is that someone is willing to spend their entire life standing between it and the world. The churches endure. The people around them are still negotiating. The deepest prayers are always cut downward. The Omo River has run for 4 million years. It did not ask permission to define every life beside it. The Omo Valley stretches through the far south of Ethiopia, a lowland corridor of acacia scrub and river floodplain that connects the Ethiopian highlands to Lake Turkana on the Kenyan border. 16 distinct tribes, 16 languages, 16 systems of meaning compressed into a single river valley. The Mercy, the Hamar, the Karo, the Dasanek. Their territories overlap and press against one another as the river itself presses against its banks. The valley is not large enough for indifference. Everything here is negotiated at close range. The Omo floods. Deliberately, seasonally, without compromise. For millennia, the annual flood deposited silt across the valley floor. The same silt-based agriculture that fed the Nile civilizations further north. The tribes built their entire calendar around this certainty. Plant after the flood. Harvest before the dry season. This is not primitive farming. This is the most precisely timed agriculture in the region, calibrated over 4,000 years of watching the same water do the same thing. The Mercy woman marks her identity in her lower lip, a clay plate inserted at adolescence, stretched over years, expanded as a declaration of status, beauty, and belonging that has no equivalent in any other culture on Earth. She does not need you to understand it. She does not need your permission. From the outside, this is incomprehensible. From the inside, it is love expressed at maximum commitment. The difference between those two perspectives is everything. In 2009, the Jibi 3 Dam was constructed upstream, the largest dam in Africa at the time of its completion. The flood stopped. The artificial release of water does not replicate the flood's timing, volume, or silt content. The agriculture that 16 tribes had practiced for 4,000 years became unreliable overnight. Crop failures multiplied. Cattle died. Conflict between tribes intensified. The dam was built to power Ethiopia's industrial ambitions. The electricity it generates travels north to Addis Ababa. The valley that powered it received nothing in return. The river remembers what the engineers forgot. One city holds the past of a continent and its entire argument about the future. Addis Ababa sits at 2,355 meters above sea level, in a highland basin ringed by eucalyptus hills, one of the highest capital cities on Earth. Its name means new flower. Emperor Menelik II founded it in 1886. It has not stopped growing since. Today it is home to more than 5 million people, a number that doubles when you count the informal settlements pressing against its edges. Glass towers rise beside corrugated iron markets. 6-lane expressways run past neighborhoods where donkeys still carry the morning's water. The African Union headquarters, a building of continental ambition, funded by China, flying 55 flags, sits within walking distance of churches that predate the nation that built it. Addis Ababa does not reconcile its contradictions. It simply contains them and accelerates. Ethiopia was never colonized. That fact is not decorative. When the colonial powers carved Africa into territories at the Berlin Conference of 1884, Ethiopia was not in the room. When Italy attempted conquest in 1896, Ethiopia defeated them at the Battle of Adwa, the only African nation to do so, the only one to enter the 20th century with its sovereignty intact. This singular fact became the load-bearing structure of an entire national identity. It is why Addis Ababa became the symbolic home of Pan-African liberation movements, why the African Union chose this city, why the Ethiopian flag carries its colors into flags across the diaspora, from Jamaica to Brazil to Harlem, as the permanent symbol that resistance can hold. The city did not earn its meaning through wealth or geography. It earned it through refusal. Walk the Mercato, the largest open-air market in Africa. 80,000 traders on a single site. Every language of the Horn of Africa spoken simultaneously. Spices that have moved through this corridor since the ancient incense trade. Fabrics, electronics, livestock, coffee. The same coffee that Ethiopia gave the world, sold by the handful from stalls no wider than a doorway. The pace here is not chaotic. It only appears so from the outside. There is an internal logic to the mercato that rewards patience. Relationships built across decades. Prices set by trust before negotiation. A grandmother who has sold injera from the same corner since before the revolution. Knowing every face, knowing every story, knowing that commerce here has always been something closer to community. The city moves at speed. Its people move at depth. But Addis Ababa is being remade at a pace its people did not choose. The condominium program, a government attempt to house the poor in vertical towers at the city's periphery, has moved entire communities from the neighborhoods their grandparents built to high-rises, where the elevator breaks before the community forms. The old city fabric, the compound walls, the shared courtyards, the architecture of proximity, is being replaced by geometry that optimizes for density and forgets what density was for. And beneath the city's extraordinary ambition runs a fault line that will not close. Ethnic tension, suppressed for decades beneath the language of national unity, has surfaced. The Tigray conflict that erupted in 2020 sent tremors through every institution this city houses. The African Union watched from its glass tower. The flags continued flying. The people continued dying. The new flower is still growing. Not everything growing is what was planted. A city is not its skyline. It is what it cannot bring itself to tear down. "5,000 years of empire, fire, and erasure." Ethiopia does not flinch. This is not one nation's endurance. It is humanity's first answer to the question of survival. Comfort tells you what you want. The stone tells you what you are. From everyone at Beyond Realms and the Epic Roma production team, thank you. Not for watching, for staying. For sitting with the fire and the hyenas and the stone and the river, long enough to feel what they cost. Ethiopia did not make itself easy to understand. We are grateful for that. We hope you are too. We will see you at the next place that refuses to be explained. Ethiopia is the oldest evidence on Earth that survival is not enough. The Danakil still burns. The hyenas still come to the gate. The churches are still in the ground. The river still sets the calendar. The city still carries a continent's grief and ambition in the same breath. None of it happened because the land was generous. All of it happened because the people, generation after generation, century after century, looked at what this land demanded and decided the answer was yes. That is not resilience. That is civilization at its most precise. The willingness to say yes to a place that never once promised it would be kind.